The first mistake people make is believing that life owes them fairness simply because they have good intentions. They work hard and expect recognition. They treat people well and expect loyalty in return. They remain patient and expect circumstances to eventually reward their patience. But life does not operate according to the emotional contracts we create in our minds. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose. Sometimes you are honest and still get betrayed. Sometimes you give your best and someone else receives the opportunity you wanted. This is where you must become mentally stronger. Ruthlessness does not mean becoming cruel. It means becoming ruthless about reality. It means refusing to waste your life arguing with facts simply because you wish they were different. If someone does not respect you, accept the information. If an opportunity disappears, accept it. If someone walks away, let them walk. If a plan fails after months of effort, study the failure instead of spending your energy asking why life was unfair to you. The world becomes less dangerous when you stop demanding that it behave according to your expectations. Think about how much suffering comes from expectation. You expect a friend to remain loyal forever, and when they change, you feel betrayed. You expect people to appreciate your sacrifices, and when they do not, resentment begins. You expect your hard work to guarantee success, and when another person gets ahead, bitterness appears. You expect people to understand your intentions, and when they misunderstand you, you become defensive. But expectations can create invisible chains. The stronger person is not the person who expects nothing from anyone. The stronger person understands that other people have their own interests, weaknesses, fears, ambitions, and contradictions. They may disappoint you, they may change, they may choose themselves. That does not mean you must become bitter. It means you must become prepared. Preparation is a form of strength. If you know that circumstances can change, you build adaptability. If you know that people can leave, you build independence. If you know that plans can fail, you build alternatives. If you know that rejection is possible, you build the ability to continue without approval. This mindset changes everything. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what can I do with what happened? That is the question of someone who refuses to remain powerless. Imagine losing an important opportunity. One person spends months complaining about the person who received it. Another studies why they were not selected, improves their skills, builds stronger relationships, and searches for the next opportunity. The event is the same. The response is different, and the response determines the future. Life will repeatedly present you with situations you cannot control. You cannot control other people's decisions. You cannot control the past. You cannot control every economic condition. You cannot control whether someone appreciates you. You cannot control whether everyone understands your intentions. But you can control your preparation. You can control your standards. You can control your discipline. You can control how quickly you recover. You can control whether disappointment becomes an excuse or a lesson. This is where emotional toughness begins. Stop expecting the world to protect you from discomfort. Discomfort is part of growth. Rejection can teach you. Failure can expose weaknesses. Betrayal can teach you discernment. Loss can teach you independence. Criticism can reveal what needs improvement. None of these experiences are pleasant, but they can become useful. The danger is not that life hurts you. The danger is that you allow pain to convince you that you are permanently powerless. That belief will destroy you faster than the original problem. You must learn to separate what happened from what you decide it means. Someone rejected you. That does not mean you are worthless. Someone betrayed you. That does not mean everyone is untrustworthy. You failed. That does not mean you are a failure. You lost. That does not mean you cannot win again. The event is one thing. The story you build around it is another. And this is where you must become ruthless with your own thinking. Do not allow one painful chapter to become the definition of your entire life. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to be disappointed. You are allowed to feel anger. But eventually, you must ask yourself what comes next, because the world will not stop moving simply because you are hurt. Time continues. Opportunities continue. People continue building. Your life continues. So build with it. Become less dependent on fairness and more dependent on preparation. Become less dependent on approval and more dependent on character. Become less dependent on perfect circumstances and more dependent on adaptability. The world may break your plans, it may disappoint you, it may force you to start again. But if you stop demanding that life be fair and start becoming strong enough to respond to reality, every setback becomes material for your next transformation. And that is where your real strength begins. Not when life becomes easier, but when you become harder to destroy. The world becomes much more difficult to control you when you stop needing everyone to approve of you. As long as your confidence depends on other people's reactions, you remain vulnerable to anyone who understands how to give you praise, criticism, rejection, or guilt. A compliment can make you change your direction. A negative comment can destroy your confidence. Someone's disapproval can make you abandon a decision you believed was right. And without realizing it, you begin living according to the emotional reactions of people around you. That is not freedom, that is dependence. The need for approval often begins innocently. You want people to like you. You want your family to be proud of you. You want your friends to understand your choices. You want the person you love to accept you. There is nothing wrong with wanting connection. The danger begins when being accepted becomes more important than being authentic. You start saying yes when you want to say no. You stay silent when you should speak. You hide your ambitions because someone might criticize them. You change your personality depending on who is in the room. You apologize for having boundaries. You explain yourself endlessly because you are terrified someone might misunderstand you. Slowly, you stop living according to your own values and start living according to the expectations of others. And the more you do this, the more power you hand away. People learn what you are willing to sacrifice for approval. If they discover that criticism makes you desperate to prove yourself, they can control you through criticism. If they discover that rejection terrifies you, they can control you through distance. If they discover that praise makes you chase their approval, they can control you through compliments. This is why emotional independence is so important. You must learn to tolerate being misunderstood. You must learn to tolerate being disliked. You must learn to hear criticism without immediately defending yourself. You must learn to make decisions that other people may not understand. That does not mean becoming arrogant. It means developing an internal standard. Before asking, what will they think? Ask, is this right for me? Before asking, will they approve? Ask, does this decision move me toward the life I want? Before changing yourself to fit someone's expectations, ask, am I becoming better or am I simply becoming easier for them to accept? These questions force you to look inward, and that is where strength begins. You cannot control everyone's opinion of you. Even if you behave perfectly, someone will misunderstand you. Someone will criticize your choices. Someone will dislike your personality. Someone will think you are too ambitious. Someone will think you are not ambitious enough. Someone will call you selfish when you establish a boundary. Someone will call you arrogant when you become confident. If you try to satisfy all of them, you will eventually become a collection of contradictions. You will not know who you are. The stronger path is to develop principles. Know what you value, now what you will tolerate, now what you will not tolerate, now what kind of person you want to become, then allow your decisions to come from those principles instead of temporary approval. This does not mean ignoring everyone. Wise people listen. If someone gives you criticism, examine it. If someone you respect disagrees with you, consider their perspective. If you discover that you are wrong, have the courage to change. But change because you discovered something true, not because you were afraid someone would stop liking you. That difference is enormous. You are not trying to become immune to other people's opinions. You are becoming capable of filtering them. Some opinions deserve serious consideration. Some deserve a brief acknowledgement. Some deserve no attention at all. The skill is knowing the difference. You will also discover that when you stop chasing approval, your relationships change. People who genuinely respect you will adapt to your boundaries. People who benefited from your constant need to please them may become uncomfortable. They may say you have changed. They may accuse you of becoming cold. They may ask why you no longer behave the way you used to. Do not automatically interpret their discomfort as proof that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes your growth feels like rejection to people who were comfortable with your lack of boundaries. Let them adjust. Your life cannot be built around keeping everyone comfortable. There will be moments when you must stand alone. There will be decisions nobody understands until the results appear. There will be periods when you receive little encouragement. This is where internal strength becomes essential. You must be able to continue working when nobody applauds, continue learning when nobody notices, continue improving when nobody compliments you, continue pursuing your purpose when people doubt you. Because if you only move when you receive approval, you will never become truly disciplined. Your deepest confidence should come from evidence you have built within yourself. You kept your promise to yourself. You survived difficult circumstances. You learned a difficult skill. You walked away from something that was destroying you. You maintained your standards when it would have been easier to compromise. Those experiences create a form of confidence that applause cannot provide. And once you possess that confidence, rejection becomes information rather than destruction. Criticism becomes something to evaluate rather than something to fear. Disapproval becomes uncomfortable but survivable. You become freer. You become harder to manipulate. You become more willing to make difficult decisions. And eventually, you understand that being respected by everyone is impossible, but respecting yourself is a choice you can make every day. The moment you stop needing everyone to approve of your existence, you become much harder for the world to break. Pain will come whether you are prepared for it or not. Rejection will come. Failure will come. Betrayal will come. There will be moments when someone you trusted disappoints you, when an opportunity disappears, when your effort produces nothing, or when life forces you to begin again after you thought you had finally arrived. You cannot build a life that prevents pain, but you can build a mind that knows what to do with it. This is where most people make a dangerous mistake. They experience pain and immediately ask, why is this happening to me? They treat suffering as an interruption to their lives rather than part of the process of becoming stronger. They spend years trying to escape difficult emotions instead of learning how to use them. You must change that relationship. Pain is information, failure is information, rejection is information, disappointment is information. None of these experiences automatically make you stronger. They become valuable only when you study them, extract the lesson, and change your behavior. Imagine someone losing an important relationship. One person becomes bitter. They decide nobody can be trusted. They carry the experience into every future relationship, expecting betrayal before it happens. Their pain becomes a permanent identity. Another person studies what happened. Maybe they ignored warning signs. Maybe they abandoned their own boundaries. Maybe they depended too heavily on another person's approval. Maybe they chose someone who repeatedly demonstrated that they were not trustworthy. The second person does not deny the pain. They learn from it. That is the difference between being wounded by experience and being educated by it. You must become ruthless about extracting lessons from what hurts you. If you fail, ask what failed. If someone betrays you, ask what you ignored. If you lose an opportunity, ask what you can improve. If someone rejects you, ask whether the rejection reveals incompatibility or something you genuinely need to develop. Do not automatically blame yourself for everything. That is another form of weakness. Sometimes people make selfish choices. Sometimes circumstances are genuinely unfair. Sometimes you simply lose. But even when the cause is outside your control, your response remains yours. That is where your power lives. You cannot always control the wound. You can control what you build around it. A rejection can become an excuse to stop trying, or it can become motivation to improve. A failure can become evidence that you are incapable, or it can reveal the skills you still need. A betrayal can make you close your heart permanently, or it can teach you to trust more intelligently. The event does not determine the final result. Your interpretation and response do. This does not mean pretending that pain does not hurt. Strength is not emotional numbness. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to admit that something broke your heart. But you cannot live permanently inside the moment that broke you. At some point, you must stand up and ask what comes next. This is where discipline becomes the bridge between pain and transformation. When you are hurt, create structure. When you are rejected, improve yourself. When you fail, return to your work. When you lose direction, return to your values. Do not wait until you feel motivated. Action often creates the emotional strength that motivation cannot provide. There will be mornings when you do not want to train, study, work, or continue. Do it anyway. There will be days when your mind tells you that nothing will change. Continue anyway. There will be moments when the past feels more powerful than the future. Build anyway. Every time you act despite emotional resistance, you teach yourself something important. Your feelings can influence you, but they do not command you. That is real strength. And slowly, the experience that once controlled you begins losing its power. You remember the betrayal without needing revenge. You remember the rejection without needing their approval. You remember the failure without fearing another attempt. You remember the pain without becoming defined by it. This is what it means to become ruthless with adversity. You refuse to waste suffering. You refuse to let a bad experience become an excuse for a smaller life. You refuse to give your past unlimited authority over your future. There is also a danger in becoming obsessed with proving people wrong. At first, revenge can feel like motivation. You want to become successful so someone who rejected you regrets it. You want to become powerful so someone who underestimated you feels small. But eventually, you must move beyond that. If your entire ambition is built around proving someone wrong, they still control you. Your goal should become larger than revenge. Build because you respect your potential. Improve because you want mastery. Become disciplined because you want freedom. Quit because you have something meaningful to contribute. The strongest transformation happens when your motivation no longer depends on the people who hurt you. You stop asking whether they noticed. You stop wondering whether they regret it. You stop checking whether they finally understand your value. You simply continue. That is when pain loses its final weapon. The world may hurt you, but it does not get to decide what you become afterward. Take the lesson. Keep the wisdom, relish the bitterness, then move forward with greater discipline, sharper judgment, and stronger boundaries, because the goal is not to become someone who never suffers. It is to become someone who can suffer, learn, adapt, and still keep moving toward the person they were meant to become. There comes a point in your life when you realize that kindness alone does not protect you. You can have good intentions, give people chances, forgive their mistakes, and still find yourself surrounded by people who take more than they give. The problem is not always that you are too kind. Sometimes the problem is that you have never taught people where your kindness ends. This is where boundaries become essential. A boundary is not a wall built from hatred. It is a line that tells the world what you will and will not accept. Without boundaries, your time becomes available to everyone, your attention becomes available to everyone, and your emotional energy becomes something other people can consume whenever they want. You begin saying yes when you mean no. You answer messages when you need rest. You tolerate disrespect because you are afraid of conflict. You keep explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand. You forgive the same behavior repeatedly because you believe being patient makes you a good person. But there is a difference between being forgiving and being endlessly available. A person can forgive someone and still remove them from their life. A person can understand why someone behaved badly and still decide that the behavior will not be tolerated again. A person can love someone and still say no. That is not cruelty. That is self-respect. The world learns how to treat you partly through what you repeatedly allow. If you tolerate every insult, people learn that insults have no consequence. If you repeatedly accept broken promises, people learn that your standards are negotiable. If you constantly rescue someone from the consequences of their choices, they may never learn responsibility. Your boundaries teach people where the line exists. But boundaries only work when they are consistent, saying, "Do not speak to me like that," and then continuing the conversation as if nothing happened teaches nothing. Telling someone you will no longer tolerate a behavior and then repeatedly accepting it sends a contradictory message. You you do not need to threaten, you need to follow through. Sometimes the strongest boundary is simply leaving the situation. If someone insults you repeatedly, you do not need to win an argument. Walk away. If someone constantly drains your energy, you do not need to convince them that they are draining you. Reduce access. If someone repeatedly violates your trust, you do not need to give them another opportunity simply because they apologize. Change their level of access to your life. This is where people often misunderstand ruthlessness. They imagine ruthlessness means becoming cold, aggressive, or heartless. Real ruthlessness can be much quieter. It means being uncompromising about what destroys your dignity. It means refusing to negotiate with behavior that repeatedly damages your peace. It means having the courage to disappoint someone when pleasing them would require betraying yourself. There will be people who become uncomfortable when you establish boundaries. They may call you selfish. They may say you have changed. They may remind you how much you once did for them. They may attempt to make you feel guilty. But guilt is not always evidence that you have done something wrong. Sometimes guilt is simply the emotional discomfort that comes with breaking an old pattern. If you spent years pleasing everyone, saying no will feel uncomfortable. Do it anyway. If you spent years explaining yourself, silence may feel strange. Practice it anyway. If you spent years accepting disrespect because you feared losing people, walking away may feel terrifying. Walk away when necessary. You must learn to tolerate the temporary discomfort of protecting yourself because the alternative is much more expensive. Without boundaries, resentment grows. You begin keeping score. You remember every sacrifice. You become angry that people do not appreciate what you give. But often, you were the one who kept giving without establishing limits. Do not turn your lack of boundaries into resentment toward other people. Change the pattern. Give because you choose to give, not because you are terrified of rejection. Help because you genuinely want to help, not because you need to be needed. Love people without making them responsible for your identity. And never confuse self-sacrifice with self-worth. A strong person can be generous without being exploitable. They can be compassionate without being controllable. They can be forgiving without being foolish. They can be kind without becoming weak. Your boundaries should also apply to yourself. You need limits on your own distractions. You need limits on how much time you waste. You need limits on the excuses you allow yourself to make. You cannot demand respect from the world while constantly disrespecting your own commitments. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your internal authority. Every time you break a destructive habit, you strengthen your discipline. Every time you walk away from something that violates your values, you strengthen your character. This is how boundaries become more than protection. They become identity. You begin understanding that your time has value, your attention has value, your energy has value, and your peace has value. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to them. So become ruthless about your limits, not about hurting people. Be firm without becoming cruel. Be distant when necessary without becoming bitter. Say no without writing an essay explaining why. Walk away without needing the other person to agree. And remember, the strongest boundary is not the one you announce, it is the one you consistently enforce. The most dangerous battle you will ever fight is not against another person, it is against your own emotional reactions. The world will constantly give you reasons to become angry, afraid, jealous, desperate, or insecure. Someone will disrespect you. Someone will criticize you. Someone will ignore you. Someone will try to provoke you. Someone will say something designed to make you react. And if you react every time, you are not in control. They are. Emotions are powerful, but they become dangerous when they take the steering wheel. Anger can make you say something that destroys a relationship. Fear can make you abandon an opportunity. Jealousy can make you act against your own values. Desperation can make you accept treatment you should have rejected long ago. This is why emotional control is not weakness. It is strategic strength. You do not become powerful by having no emotions. You become powerful by refusing to let every emotion dictate your behavior. Think about the last time someone provoked you. Perhaps they insulted you in front of others. Your body reacted immediately. Your heart accelerated. Your mind began preparing a response. You wanted to prove yourself. You wanted to hurt them back. But what would happen if you simply paused? Not because you were afraid, because you were thinking. That pause creates space between stimulus and response. And inside that space is your power. The person who can make you angry can influence you. The person who can make you desperate can influence you. The person who can make you afraid of losing them can influence you. So the goal is not to prevent people from pushing your buttons. The goal is to stop giving them buttons to push. This requires self-awareness. Learn what triggers you. Maybe disrespect triggers you. Maybe rejection does. Maybe being ignored makes you desperate for attention. Maybe criticism makes you defensive. Maybe seeing someone else succeed makes you question your own worth. Whatever it is, study it. Do not be ashamed of your triggers. Understand them, because anything you refuse to examine can eventually control you. When you know your emotional weaknesses, you can prepare for them. If someone insults you, you do not have to answer immediately. If someone sends an angry message, you do not have to respond while angry. If someone threatens to leave, you do not have to beg them to stay. If someone criticizes your ambition, you do not have to prove yourself. Sometimes the strongest response is no immediate response. Let the emotion pass through you without turning it into an action. This does not mean becoming passive. There are moments when you must speak. There are moments when you must defend yourself. There are moments when you must leave. But act because you decided to, not because someone successfully provoked you into reacting. That distinction changes everything. A controlled person can be firm without becoming explosive. They can say no without screaming. They can walk away without creating a scene. They can defend themselves without losing themselves. That is the kind of ruthlessness you should develop. Ruthlessness toward your impulses. You must become uncompromising about allowing temporary emotions to destroy long-term goals. Imagine someone insults you at work. You could spend the entire day thinking about it. You could retaliate. You could create unnecessary conflict. Or you could remember your larger objective, your career, your reputation, your future. Suddenly, the insult becomes smaller. You realize that reacting might satisfy your ego for 30 seconds while creating consequences for months. This is strategic thinking. The same principle applies to relationships. Someone pulls away. Your first instinct is to chase. You send messages. You ask what happened. You demand reassurance. But desperation often makes you weaker. Step back. Observe. If someone genuinely wants to communicate, give them space to communicate. If someone chooses to leave, allow them to leave. You cannot force loyalty through emotional pressure. Your dignity matters more than temporary reassurance. Emotional control also means learning not to make permanent decisions during temporary emotional states. Do not destroy something important because you are angry today. Do not abandon your purpose because you are discouraged this week. Do not return to someone who repeatedly harms you simply because you feel lonely tonight. Feelings change. Consequences remain. This is why disciplined people create rules for themselves. They do not trust every emotional impulse. They know that sometimes the mind becomes irrational under pressure, so they pause. They sleep on important decisions. They step away from heated conversations. They wait before sending emotional messages. They return to their principles. That is not weakness. That is self-command. And self-command becomes more important as you become more ambitious. The higher you rise, the more people may test your emotional stability. Some will challenge you. Some will compete with you. Some will try to provoke you because they want to see whether you can be controlled. Do not give them the satisfaction. Remain calm, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand that your attention is valuable. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not have to answer every accusation. You do not have to defend every part of yourself. Sometimes silence protects your future better than an emotional explanation. The strongest person in the room is not always the loudest. Sometimes it is the person who remains completely composed while everyone else loses control. That is the person who can think clearly when others cannot. That is the person who can make decisions while others are trapped inside emotion. That is the person who becomes difficult to manipulate. And when you master that ability, the world may still hurt you, reject you, disappoint you, and challenge you, but it will have far less power to control what you do next. Master your emotions, and you take back the authority that reaction once gave away. The final stage of becoming ruthless is not learning how to dominate other people. It is learning how to dominate yourself. Many people spend years trying to control circumstances, control outcomes, control relationships, and control what other people think about them. But the strongest individuals eventually discover a powerful truth. The only thing you can truly control is the person you become. Everything else is uncertain. The economy can change. Relationships can end. Opportunities can disappear. People can betray you. Your reputation can be misunderstood. Life can become difficult without warning. If your confidence depends entirely on external conditions, then every change in circumstance has the power to break you. This is why discipline matters. Discipline creates stability when circumstances become unstable. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is reliable. Motivation appears when you feel inspired. Discipline continues when inspiration disappears. Most people wait until they feel ready. They wait until they feel confident. They wait until conditions improve. They wait until they have more time. They wait until fear disappears. And while they are waiting, life continues moving forward without them. A disciplined person understands something different. Action often comes before confidence. Progress often comes before motivation. Strength often comes before certainty. You do not become disciplined because life becomes easy. You become disciplined because life is difficult. Think about the habits that shape a person. The ability to wake up and do what needs to be done. The ability to continue working when nobody is watching. The ability to keep promises made to yourself. The ability to remain consistent even when results are delayed. These habits may appear ordinary, but over time they create extraordinary resilience because discipline builds evidence. Every time you keep your word to yourself, your confidence grows. Every time you follow through on a commitment, your self-respect grows. Every time you resist a destructive impulse, your self-control grows. And slowly you begin trusting yourself. That trust is powerful. Many people trust other people's opinions more than their own actions. They feel confident when praised. They feel weak when criticized. Their identity changes according to the reactions around them. A disciplined person develops something stronger. They know what they have done. They know how much effort they invested. They know the promises they kept. Their confidence comes from experience rather than approval. This is why self-mastery is the ultimate form of ruthlessness. You stop negotiating with every excuse. You stop allowing temporary emotions to dictate permanent decisions. You stop abandoning important goals because progress feels slow. You become more committed to your future than your comfort. That is not easy. There will be mornings when you do not want to continue. There will be days when the results seem invisible. There will be periods when other people appear to be moving faster than you. There will be moments when quitting feels reasonable. This is where most people break, not because they lack talent. They lack talent not because they lack intelligence, because they lack consistency. The world often rewards consistency more than intensity. Anyone can work hard for a week. Anyone can feel motivated for a month. Few people continue for years. Few people continue after failure. Few people continue after rejection. Few people continue when nobody applauds. That is why disciplined people become difficult to stop. They do not depend on emotional momentum. They depend on systems. They create routines. They create standards. They create habits that function even when emotions fluctuate. And this applies to every area of life. Discipline in your thinking, discipline in your health, discipline in your finances, discipline in your relationships. Discipline in your work, discipline in your reactions, every area you strengthen becomes another layer of protection against chaos. You do not need perfection. Perfection is an illusion. You need consistency. A person who improves slightly every day eventually becomes unrecognizable compared to who they used to be. This is also why comparison becomes dangerous. When you constantly compare your progress to someone else's, you lose focus. You start measuring your life through another person's timeline, but your real competition is the person you were yesterday. Become stronger than that person, become wiser than that person, become more disciplined than that person. If you continue doing that, the results eventually become impossible to ignore. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: self-mastery creates freedom. The disciplined person is not controlled by every temptation, not controlled by every distraction, not controlled by every fear, not controlled by every opinion, not controlled by every setback. They have trained themselves to continue moving forward regardless of temporary conditions. That is why the world cannot easily break them. The world can create obstacles, it can create delays, it can create pain, but it cannot easily destroy someone who has learned to rely on discipline instead of circumstances. So build your habits, strengthen your character, protect your focus, keep your promises to yourself, continue when motivation disappears, continue when results are slow, continue when nobody notices. Because the ultimate form of ruthlessness is not becoming harder toward the world. It is becoming so disciplined that no matter what the world does, you continue becoming the person you decided to be. And once you reach that level of self-mastery, the world may challenge you, but it will no longer have the power to break you.